Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Bad Movie Night. My name's Chris, and tonight I checked out a new horror movie called The Call. It's got Shaye and Tobin, and it is directed by Timothy Woodward Jr. I remember seeing a trailer for this, and in the trailer it highlights an interesting gimmick where a bunch of teens are called over to a house, and if they can stay on the phone and communicate with this dead woman for a minute, they'll receive $100,000. Interesting gimmick, interesting setup. So, let's start out with some positives. The art department, the lighting, the camera, all pretty good. The set looks sometimes cheap, sometimes fun, but they did enough to make it like this horror funhouse kind of feel. The mansion looks pretty cool and they lit it pretty well. Lots of warm colors and stuff like that. It gave it a really nice little atmosphere. They have some cool visuals in this movie. There's a scene where two kids are kind of talking in a car as the rain pours down and there's like red light shining through. Thought it looked pretty cool. Set an eerie little tone. You have some very, very cliche horror visuals in this movie as well, with the ladies and people who like crack and contort their bodies and then crawl really fast. It's like you've seen it a million times in other horror movies and plays out in this as well. But it's still kind of an effective visual. So I really didn't enjoy this movie. It is written so unbelievably poorly. I just don't understand how anyone can look at this script and give it the green light. Sure, I am, like I said before, a very cynical viewer of horror movies now because I watch them all the time and I've seen so many and I know the tropes so well. And so for, younger viewers or people who are more or less experienced with horror, there are the tropes that will probably be effective for them. And some of the execution on them is okay, but for the most part, this movie is all about jump scares. The characters are non-existent. They're one-dimensional, which a lot of times is fine if you're setting up them to be fodder for interesting kill sequences. But this movie plays with a theme of like vengeance and morality, and you're facing your worst fears. And so for those internal struggles to be effective, you kind of need to know a little bit more about the characters. And I get that you're learning about them when they face their fears, but the whole premise for this thing just makes no goddamn sense. And there's so many plot holes. I'm going to get into spoilers because it's kind of hard to talk about the problems with this movie without explaining what they did and didn't explain in the movie. So, like I said, this premise of Tobin Bell calling you up with his creepy Tobin Bell voice saying, do you want to play a game and, sit on the phone for a minute with a ghost? That's kind of cool. It's evocative. It interests me, and like I said, I'm so cynical about this stuff half the time. I've seen so much that it's still kind of like an interesting little idea. But unfortunately, it plays out in a completely uninteresting way. But let's get into some spoilers. Shaye is angry because teens are harassing her. So, to get back at the teens, she sits in a chair with her creepy doll and then hangs herself. And then somehow, Tobin Bell is aware that if you have a phone, this phone, that she can talk to the kids and then bring the kids into their own worst fears, which place that she can get vengeance. That's just completely unexplainable, and I think the creators and the writers and the director know that, how are we going to explain that? And the way they go around not explaining that is to just never fucking explain it and not bother to even try. There's a little hint where once or twice two characters say, she's a witch. Okay, actually that might explain some of it. Have her be a fucking witch and show her doing her witching stuff. I guess that's maybe what they were trying to do with her sitting there with a creepy doll. But I don't know, it's not quite clear. The other thing with this movie is it starts out with this really pandering, strong 80s vibe. And I mean pandering in a way that it feels low budget, and the music is so aggressively what you would think of as 80s. Every 80s aspect is so unsubtle that it's it sticks out to you, and that's what I mean when I say pandering. It doesn't really feel like a world. It feels like we're going to an 80s themed party where everybody's so exaggerated with their 80s-ness. And then you get sequences near the beginning where the sound design is just garbage. They're at a circus and they do the shot where they're kind of panning around people as they walk by the camera and they're talking, but you don't hear anything because of why? I don't know. It's not like a stylistic thing. It's just like it feels empty and devoid of sound except for the main characters. It was really bizarre.
Challenge the strongman. Swing the hammer. Ah! Tony, come on in. In a row is a winner. Okay, Bon Jovi. That's enough. Come on over, ladies and gentlemen. That's enough. You're not a winner, you're a loser. Take off. Rip off. Reefer vodka.
So the 80s aesthetic thing is there for like the first 35 to 40 minutes with characters looking 80s. The synth like stabs come in a lot of times to highlight like jump scares, and it just, to me, it was laughable and weird and out of place. And I'm not sure why it was set in the 80s. Maybe to avoid like cell phones, but like with this whole premise, you could have just had Tobin Bell say, if you want to participate, you have to give me your cell phone, or something stupid like that. That would have easily solved that problem. It just was distracting, and I don't understand the purpose for it. I mean, we could talk about Lin Shaye and Tobin Bell. A lot of people hold these guys up for like as great actors. I don't really. I think they don't have much range. I mean, Tobin Bell is cool as John Kramer, and in this he sounds exactly and looks exactly like John Kramer would. He says things that sound like Jigsaw. Lin Shaye is always Lin Shaye. I like her. She's charming. She does do a little bit more in this movie where she plays more of a villain and she hams it up a little bit, but she still just comes off as Lin Shaye in every Lin Shaye movie for me. That doesn't mean I don't like her, but it's just kind of what you expect when you put Lin Shaye and Tobin Bell in a movie. So the way these people like run around in this house and they're convinced and motivated is all like nonsense, because it's just what the writer needed them to do to continue the story instead of what like real people would do. This one character sees another character on the TV like scheming against her, and then when she confronts him, he says, well, Lin Shaye is not, she's a monster, and she immediately is convinced by that.
It's just a trap. It's just a trap.
She tricked me.
She tricked all of us.
Or it was all like, what was the purpose of setting up that whole conflict right before if you're going to resolve it immediately with no surprise and no like pushback on the character? It's like a waste of time. And that's how a lot of this movie feels like, a waste of time. It takes 40 minutes to get it to this phone gimmick, which I like the phone gimmick. But then what that is it transports you into the land of horror cliches, like a Nightmare on Elm Street, like warehouse that's all lit ominously, and creature people, and like I said, creaking, cracking ladies appear and jump scare you, and then you get little hints of their backstory. So you learn that two of the characters are like from an abusive household, and you learn that this character was like in this traumatic experience with his girlfriend who was pregnant, died in a car accident, and that stuff is way more like worse than what happened to Lin Shaye. Lin Shaye, yes, she was unfairly treated by the community because somebody else blamed her for a murder she didn't commit. But then these kids like harass her throughout the years while like breaking her windows and stuff. But they're kids, man. They're fucking stupid. I'd grant you that, but call the cops. You don't need to kill yourself with a doll and then come back as to avenge them. Especially this main character that we are introduced and follow throughout the thing. He didn't even participate in any of the harassment, but for some reason he's a victim of her as well, of her vengeance. If she was just a witch and then got mad because they did that to her at that beginning of the movie, you could have played it up where it made more sense and he's just like this innocent victim. But like the fact that the whole movie revolves around them going into the phone and learning about their deepest fears and she's participating in that, she would, if she had any sort of morality, she learns that like, oh, actually, you know what? These kids are all tortured themselves. They're all been abused in some ways, except for the one. And you could have released them because, yeah, they did stupid things and they harassed her, and that's not okay. But that doesn't mean they should be killed. Make them learn their lesson. Don't just murder them. What? Why? So, yeah, the writing is so low effort. It's filled with plot holes. It's frustrating. It's unbelievably frustrating. If you liked it, I'm glad. Like, yeah, there's some mindless entertainment to this. Like I said, running around those hallways, I guess, could be fun. But for me, it was so cliched and so tropey, and I knew exactly what it was going to be once it started. And they went on for so goddamn long. And they didn't add anything to the story. Sure, the first one you learned some about like the backstory about their abuse, but then as soon as it went on for another 10 minutes of just running around a hallway while people jumped out and screamed at you, was such a waste. And so it just all became super repetitive and redundant and derivative of every PG-13 horror movie I've ever seen. And then the last twist, again, is filled with so many goddamn plot holes to cap this movie off that's just left you like dumbfounded by how somebody could take the script and think this is ready to be made into a movie. Especially like a movie that looks like it's decently budgeted. Like the production team came prepared and did their job in a way that elevates this movie beyond what it should ever be. Meaning the set pieces, the lighting, the camera work, everything like that is too good for this. This was bad. I just really didn't enjoy it. And like I said, and for the last time I'll say it, yes, I'm cynical. I get that. And if you had fun with this movie, I'm happy for you. I just didn't. But yeah, that's going to do it for the call. Let me know what you guys think down below, and then let me know what I should be watching. I'll catch you here next time. Goodbye.